All right, ladies, this is Unit 6, our last and final unit. So I was supposed to read the K to 12 edition, and I did read that one, but I read it the last time as well. So I kind of compared it to the Chinese higher education for 2017. One thing that I noticed, a lot of the trends are very much the same as what we are heading towards. They kind of have the same challenges and all of that, blending the formal and non-formal and improving that digital literacy. One thing that I wanted to kind of talk about was the wearable technology. I never thought about, the kids have gotten into wearing Fitbits and everything else, but that kind of makes them reflective on their own learning as well as kind of competing with one another to make the best of themselves. So even at the second grade level, that wearable technology was something that was definitely interesting, that it's kind of crossing countries as well. So that does speak to the ISTE standards of the students using technology to identify and solve problems and create a useful solution. They would compete who can get the most steps and who is going to be the best for that day. So that's something that I think if we can continue with that, that would definitely be awesome. It also talked about the integration of technology to promote excellence. That does help there. And then the effective use of information and technology. So they are using that to better themselves and to just compare and be reflective, which is where we need them to be. So I thought that was interesting between the K-12 and the Chinese higher education. It was all kind of talking the same.
I went ahead and I added this slide. I know that most people have read this article already. Both of my teammates have, and from the other videos I've seen, it's a popular choice. So I just kind of, I find it interesting how they broke up the 7 different technologies and why they're created. Sometimes we think all technology is educational, and it was all created with certain purposes. So it's good to look and figure that out why. Like the consumer ones, which ones are really created more for social media and which ones are really learning technologies. I made a little table of the 3 sections of my article on the 1 to 2 years, 2 to 3, and 4 to 5. And I know we talked a lot about makerspace, and since I work closely with a librarian, it's something we've been trying to, we're very techy at our school, but we're trying to get our principal on board our makerspace because she just wants to make sure that it's very purposeful. It's not just a playtime, but there's meaning tied to it. So I really like this art, the quote about they are increasing interest in STEM fields and how important that is. And in Croatia, they loaned 1,000 robots to 166 schools across Croatia for competitions for them to apply their skills. So it taps into the creativity, it taps into all of the STEM components. So that's a really neat, there's a purpose to it, not just in the creating, but also in the competing. So I thought that was pretty neat. In the 2 to 3 years to adoption, I also chose robotics. It talks about how it is also a big focus on STEM, and we know that that is a big push in our country as well. It talks about how in Australia, they mandated the addition of robotics to the school curriculum, which I thought was pretty neat. We do it as an extension as our STEM club after school, or with our gifted kids, but this is part of the curriculum for every child. And in South Korea, they're piloting a program where robotics teach students English, which I thought was pretty cool, and talking a little bit about artificial intelligence in the next 4 to 5 years. I also talked about wearable technology. The quotes that I liked were, they're talking about leaders recognize that wearable technologies and the maker movement provide a gateway to increase girls' interest in STEM disciplines. Yes, all 3 of my quotes had to do with STEM. That's the science specialist in me. The female founders of JewelBots, a company offering programmable friendship bracelets that help girls learn to code, have stated that the goal of their product is to steer more young women into STEM careers by making technology fun. Since so many, even today, when you think scientists, most children will say it's a man, the big push on STEM, but it's just making it accessible to them and showing them that they too can have a career in technology.
All right, so I also read the K-12 this time, and I haven't read anything from K-12 throughout this class because I was doing library edition, but that wasn't available for Unit 6. And I decided to go ahead and delve into maker spaces and talk about how they went with ISTE standards, so we didn't overlap. And it is something that people have spoken about a lot. However, I never heard the term before this particular class. So I wanted to make sure that I was getting a full, like, what is this makerspace situation? Well, how about I found out that I have been having maker spaces in my classroom? That's what I found out today. And the fact that you actually have a space is a secondary criteria to being a makerspace. The whole idea is that the kids are doing something hands-on and creative to learn. And that is something that I've actually done a lot in my classroom this specific year. So yeah, a space is not necessarily something you need. And another term they coined was maker education. The whole idea that they are creating and they are exploring the situation before you actually give them the answer to it. And then that definitely went with the ISTE standard for students, which was innovative design, where they had to go in, create, problem solve, and come up with things on their own. So it was directly aligned. Another part of this was the fact that it was enabled by 3D printers, laser cutters, animation, software. Right before me, you did talk about how they were, you said about robotics, that they were being, what'd you say? You said that they were being given away, right? Like they were donated, I think was what we said. And my son actually was in a Horizons class, and they had a robot that was given to them, to their class. So they dealt in robotics, and he's in first grade right now. And he also was coding. So these are things that were happening in maker spaces in a STEM bin situation in first grade. So he's coded things and he's created robots. Like, I'm just shocked. So this is definitely something that's happening right now. And I love the fact that maker spaces gives you the whole idea that failure is a part of learning. What I've found for sure with students in my classroom is that if they think they're going to fail, they'll give up first. And it's very important for them to realize that that's how you learn. You have to fail at something and try it again in order to figure out, learn from your mistakes and move on. So that's something that has been really big for me, and makerspaces definitely help with that. Another thing that spoke to our second ISTE standard that I have there for coaches and administrators and visionary leadership was the fact that girls and students of color are underrepresented in makerspaces. So there were a couple librarians that went ahead and created Make Her spaces, where it was just for females trying to get into those creative situations and go along with all those STEM situations as well. And coming from Detroit, I actually have a couple people that I went to high school with that are in education now that are dealing with trying to get students of color to be a part of these type of situations where they're being creative and have access to that technology. And that kind of, touches on the students of color as well. So I did think that this was a part of the ISTE standard for administration and librarians, or coaches, I think is what we called us. And that was definitely directly aligned as well.
Awesome. Maker spaces are awesome. Our librarian does them. So we rotate throughout. We go to library one week and then maker space the next week. So it's an awesome thing if you can get your administrator on board. So that is it for Unit 6. Thank you, ladies.